Defiant immigration activists in Los Angeles are now trying all they can to stop ICE agents. They've been showing up to raids with megaphones and cameras, and now they're trying to dox agents across the Los Angeles area. These posters that you're looking at on your screen right now have been spotted in several neighborhoods. Now, they contain photos, names, and phone numbers of ICE agents, along with a message written in Spanish, which reads, "Careful with these faces." Now, a DHS spokesperson is telling Fox, quote, "These pathetic activists are putting targets on the backs of our law enforcement as they shield MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and other vicious gangs that traffic women and children, kidnap for ransom, and poison Americans with lethal drugs. These individuals will be held accountable for obstructing the law and justice." This shouldn't be controversial. Haley, an apt statement. It absolutely should not be controversial at all.
It shouldn't be. And where's Hakeem Jeffries? We just did a segment on him talking about traumatized federal workers because they got an email. What about these traumatized federal workers? You know who's traumatized? Any immigration official in this country. And it's not just what's happening here, these pictures. It's 2018 when AOC ran on abolishing ICE and said that these migrant detention facilities are concentration camps. Those were her words. You know what happened to Border Patrol? The whipping incident, where Joe Biden said, "You will pay." These people were strapping migrants. It's outrageous. And then a 511-page report comes out, and oh, wait, they never did that, but the president demonized them. That's Border Patrol. And then you get to this. You think they feel safe? You think their wives feel safe? You think their children feel safe? Their pictures up? These are the traumatized federal workers. These guys deserve raises for protecting us.
And the reality is that all too often, the law permits certain wiggle room. And it takes a horrific event for there to be a law put in place to protect individuals. We saw across the pond, the state of New Jersey, for example, put in place an anti-doxing law for judges only after one horrifically had her spouse and child shot on her doorstep. So the point remains, Caroline, that currently federal law prohibits doxing only against covered persons, with an enhancement thanks to Congress 9 years ago for using the interstate system. But at the end of the day, that mostly ties them to court systems and criminal investigations. You can certainly make an argument that this is all tied to criminal investigations, but the reality is there's a wiggle room, a fine needle being utilized by, I won't refer to them as activists at all. They don't deserve that label whatsoever.
Oh, gosh, no.
But the danger is so paramount.
Absolutely, and a legal remedy is needed for these brave men and women that are putting themselves and their families in harm's way to simply enforce federal law. That's what they're doing. They're just going by the book. And, you know, these activists, of course, their outrage is tied to the ICE raids overall. And I think it's important to note that the only reason I think the media is able to demonize and humanize these ICE agents so much is because the raids have to be conducted in the streets because of sanctuary city policies. These progressive blue jurisdictions are refusing to cooperate with ICE. And so they're forced to do this in kind of a public spectacle way in the streets, whether it's New York City or Chicago, and they're allowed to make a circus of it, which is not, of course, what they're doing.
Will Congress pass legislation to make sure covered people will...
To the extent that it's possible. We were talking in the break about whether it is legal. Andy McCarthy thinks it might actually not pass constitutional muster if they try to do it. But they should try some. And again, these activists, I'm so glad you both focused on that, because whose benefit is it to put up these horrible posters? In the benefit of the cartel. They are, maybe call themselves activists, but they are essentially useful idiots for the cartels, for Tren de Aragua, for all of the mobs. It's like Al Capone putting up pictures of Elliot Ness all around because he's worried about getting arrested. It's the cartels that are benefiting from this most. It's not the activists, it's not civil rights activists or anything like that. It is the cartels. This is just helping the worst of the worst, which is exactly the kind of people that ICE is trying to get.
Right, and I would have to think that there'd be part of the law that would look at that as aiding and abetting.
Bingo.
And I'm not Emily.
Sounds like
I haven't done the closing argument on that.
Yeah.
But I do think that my understanding of the law is that there would be. And I would like to have that conversation. Let's just have that conversation because as Caroline mentioned, as we all agree, there's certain categories of people that you have to look out for. Law enforcement, ICE agents, judges. I live in Jersey, so I remember that case. You have to do it. I mean, they're stepping in the fold and protecting the rest of us. And they have families and people who care about them in those residences, on the other ends of those phones. that are being released, those numbers.
And the laws cover the families of the covered persons,
Right.
just not these agents. But believe me, those are not activists. They are obstructionists, and it is dangerous.